Okay, so let's get to it. So today we're going to look at the text wrap feature in InDesign, and we're going to look at its sort of in-app applications, and then how to combine or how to use things like alpha masks and um, paths in your Photoshop files or in Illustrator files to also generate text runaround. So we're going to get started by creating a document. And I'm just going to make it 2 pages, non-facing. That should do the trick. Open that up. So before we get into doing anything, text wrap can be found. I'm using a typography layout at the moment, so you can switch your layouts via the layout switcher up here. I'm using the text wrap feature, which will be found along the right-hand side. If you don't have that there, or you're using a different layout that doesn't have it in the side, simply go to Window, down to Text Wrap, and that'll open it right up. So this is the box we're going to focus on this time around. So I'm going to start here by just creating, we're going to do a couple of basic things, which you probably already know, but I'm going to go ahead and drop some placeholder text in this, and I'm going to drop it up a point size or two, a little bit of leading, and then I'm also going to take the text area. I'm going to go to my text frame options, and I'm going to change this to 2 columns, and we'll give it a little, like a pica and a half on the gutter. And I think it's going to be easiest to see how all this works if I go ahead and select all my text. I'm just going to justify it so that it's, flushed along the left side and the right side. All right. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at this text wrap window real quick. Up here along the top are the different methods of wrapping text. So we'll focus on those. Right here below it, those allow you to set the offset. So within a square-shaped picture box or text pullout, you can increase the text offset by increasing these numbers, and you'll see this little link here, like we have throughout all of Adobe Creative Suite applications. Whenever this link is active, it will tie all these fields together. So if you're not familiar with all that, you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a moment. So we're going to start with, I'm just going to create a rectangle. And I'm just going to draw it in here to the top, here on the top corner. And then, just so we can tell everything that's going on, I'm going to fill it with blue so we can see that box. And I'm also going to give it some transparency. This is probably something you might or might not want to do. But I'm just going to give it some transparency so that we can see through it and see what's going on with the type when we place some of these images, some of these blocks. So you can see that the blue is sitting right on top of this text box, and the text is running over underneath it, which of course is not what we want. What we want is for the text to actually start below it and wrap around it if it only takes up a portion of the column. So we're going to do basic text runaround by selecting this box. We're going to go to our text wrap, and the first one is no text wrap at all. You'll notice that it's the one that's highlighted. We're going to go to the one right next to it, wrap around bounding box, click on that, and you'll see that our text has now moved down just below it, below the box, and it pushed it further down into this column. So this box is preventing the text from starting before this point. And this line of text is like right up against that blue box, and that again is probably not what we want. That's where these offsets come into play. So here's that link I mentioned. Right now it's broken, and I think that's where we're going to leave it. But if I were to link that, turn that on so it looks like that, when I adjust any of these fields, you see all of the fields change. And I'm just going to kind of zoom in on my text here, on my image area here, you'll also see this light blue line around the outside. That indicates our offset area. So if I reduce this back down to 0, you'll see that that line goes away. And I'm just going to unlink that. And I just want to give some more room at the bottom. So I'm going to select the bottom runaround, and we're just going to increase that. You can see that text moving away. And I'm going to make it match. I'm going to make it 1.6 pixels, 1.5 pixels to match my gutter, so that when I look at it in layout mode, my gutter and my text offset are all nice and neat and even. Text wrap is as simple as that. There's some other features here we're going to look at, but so the second thing I want to do is I'm going to select this again, and I'm just going to switch this back to 0. And then I'm going to move this down here into the middle of my page. And you can see that the text is running around the box, but right up against the edges. So we're going to start off here with that selected. We're going to link all of our offset boxes together, measurements, and we're just going to increase that offset. And we can see, as we do it, the text moving away from our box. And I'm just going to, we'll set that to a pike and a half as well. We'll zoom in here. So we can see this light blue line indicating where our offset is. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that the gap between my type and the bottom is much larger than it is the rest of the way around. That's because a lot of times these gaps are affected, well, all the time, not a lot of times, all the time, every time, these gaps are actually affected by the leading of your type. So if I want to close this up a little bit, so if I want to make this all even, I need to sort of tinker with it. So I could take some leading out of my type. Maybe that's where I want it to be. Maybe that's not the change I need to make. One of the other things I could do here is, remember, if this link is broken, all of these operate independently. I could go to my bottom and I could just, independently of all the other measurements, I could drop the runaround on that. See what happened? Closed up, and it's pretty close to the same gap as all the other sides. You can also sort of move your image box around a little bit to sort of get things centered up. But sometimes to make these gaps match up all the way around takes a little bit of tinkering. So just know that. So that's wraparound bounding box. And wraparound bounding box is just basically wrapping around our entire shape. So next we're going to move on to, we're going to skip over the object runner shape here for a moment because there's more things we're going to do with that. But let's take a look at these two items here real quick. This one right here is jump object. So with this block in the position it's in, if I select that and I select jump object, you'll see that the type in both columns jumps the object entirely and picks up at the bottom. And the same thing happens with jump to next column, except that it's going to, in this case, it's going to isolate the text to the top. And if I had text set up on my next page, it would be picking up there. One of the other things I can do, though, here to show, sort of illustrate this, is I'm just going to drop this all back down. Let's slide this over into just this column. You'll see the text runs down, stops at the image, and picks back up on the next column and continues on. So that is jump object and jump to next column. So now we're going to move on to, and I'm just going to pull this out of here. Next, we're going to move on to the wraparound object shape. So we're going to start by grabbing an ellipse, and I'm just going to draw an ellipse right in the middle of my text. Let's fill it real quick. And there's no runaround on this right now. If we take a look at text wrap, it's got the no wrap option enabled, which means the text is running right beneath it. So I'm going to select wraparound object shape. And when I do that, it drags my type around to the outline of my object. And you'll notice that my offsets, they're all grayed out except one. That's because this one object controls all the sides of the runaround. So you just increase it by increasing the point size there. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If I move this around, you'll see that it affects the text wherever I place it. So I'm just going to leave this right here. And I could create as well. It doesn't have to be a circle. I could take my pen tool and let's just create sort of a wavy line real quick. I'll fill that. Actually, I'm not even going to fill that this time. I'm just going to, with that selected, I'm going to go to my text wrap, wrap to object, and you'll see that it wraps the text to that shape. Pretty neat. And we can also set, with the shape selected, we could also give it some offset. If we've got a fill on that or something to that effect, we could offset that wrap. All right. Okay. So let's move on now to, oops, grab the wrong object. All right. So I also mentioned before that we can use alpha masks, paths in Photoshop documents for our text wrap. We can also use objects in our Illustrator files for runaround. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to jump over here to Photoshop real quick, and I've got this image. All right. And I downloaded this from Unsplash, and this was the image originally. And I added some layers into it. I isolated the picture. I turn that layer off. I blurred the field behind him, and then I added a blue shape in here to give it some color, to sort of set a little bit of a tone in it. So if I turn those off, you'll see that on my picture, I've got an alpha mask specified in order to isolate him. The other thing this Photoshop document has are paths, and I've got a very rough outline of my picture here as well. So if I select that, you'll see that I didn't try to outline him very close because I really don't need to. I just kind of roughly, quickly outlined his shape. So I've got these two things. I've got this path, and I've got this alpha mask. So I'm going to jump back over here to InDesign. And we're going to place that image. So Command D on the keyboard, or File Place. I'm going to go find, here's my photo of that picture. Select him, and I'm going to show import options. Turn that on. Because what I want to do is I think I just want the picture. So I'm going to turn off all of that. So I'm just left with the picture himself. Say OK, and let's just draw him out onto our page. All right, there he is. And then I'm just going to, so I don't have such a large text area, or image area. I want to sort of pull that in, and let's slide him over right here. Let's make him a little bit smaller. Let's see here. duplicated them. One more time. There we go. All right. So we're just going to place them right there in the middle of our page. Now, if we go back over to our text wrap area, oops, text wrap panel, we're going to select that wraparound object shape again. And you'll see that by default, it's just jumping to each side of that image, of the text area, or the image box. I'm going to go down here to contour options, and instead I'm going to select alpha channel. If there's an alpha channel in my file, that will show up. And when I do, you'll see that the text pulls right in around his body. And I can use this offset to offset that text. Very cool. So however many alpha masks I have in this file, I'll be able to select the particular alpha mask I want to use. You'll see that here's the alpha is the transparency alpha that was applied to that layer. If I had other alpha channels in there, I would see all of them here under the alpha drop down. And I can do the same thing if I go to Photoshop path. You'll see that it just sort of offset it a little bit wider because my path wasn't tight up against the picture. So, and down here again, I can select however many paths I have in my file. I'll be able to select any of them. So that's using Photoshop path and alpha channel to create our runaround. You can see there's other objects in here. Select subject, bounding box. Bounding box, of course, is the entire shape of our image box. So we're just going to leave that on alpha channel. And we'll slip him over here and kind of let him bleed off the page. All right. So we've got that. So the next image I'm going to import is, and let's see if we can find something here kind of quick. I'm going to select this image right here. And I don't need import options. And I don't need replace selected image. Say open. And I'm just going to draw this right here. And now when I go back up here to my wraparound object shape, I can go down here and select one of these other options. And I'm going to use detect edges, so it detects the edges of that artwork. You'll see that it detects just the outer perimeter of it. I'll increase my offset to give it some room. There we go. Not too bad. So those are the basics of using the text wrap tool. One other thing I didn't point out, wrap to both right and left sides, it gives you some different options here. If you've got a multi-page document, a book, you can tell it that it's only going to wrap towards or away from the spine, just the largest area, right side, left side, or both of them. So I'm leaving it on both. I've never found much reason to go beyond this, but I'm sure a day will come when I'll need one of the others. So, all right, so that's the wraparound. One last thing. What if I have an object that I don't want, or what if I have a block of text that I don't want to be affected by text wrap that I put on an object? We can control that on a item by item basis. So I'm going to go back to my circle here, draw a circle. We're going to text wrap it. And I'm just going to fill it here real quick with black. And go back to text wrap and give that a bit of an offset. So what if I have a block of text? I'm just going to draw it out off here to the side. And Suppose we want a pull quote. So, and our pull quote is going to live inside of this circle. So we need to wrap around the circle, but we don't want it to affect our pull quote here. So if I'm just going to very quickly set that. Let's see here. There we go. We'll increase the point size a little bit and make it white. Oops, wrong one. Select type, select white. Now let's just lay it over top of this black box. But wait, it went away because there's a runaround set on this box. So if I right click on this box and I select my text frame options, it's also Command B, you'll see at the bottom of this is a checkbox for ignore text wrap. I'm just going to turn that on. You see my text pops right back in there. And then I can control that in that way whether or not a particular block of text is affected by the text wrap that we've set up.